Yo. Before we start today, I have an amazing free guide. So I did a training hacks guide. It was absolutely amazing. It was received like thousands of times, which was absolutely great. And I loved helping you level up with your training hacks. But today I've made a similar style document with 5 high-level training hacks I use, the secrets I give my clients, help them lose more fat and gain more muscle. And that's available to you totally free, just like a Google Doc where I broke down some 5 high-level hacks and tips. Think things like diet breaks, carb refeeds, all that great stuff. Just some things that are really going to help you elevate your game. So if you want that, message me on Instagram with the keyword nutrition hacks. So just send me that and I'll absolutely be sure to blast it over to you. Totally free. All I ask is that you follow me on Instagram. But now let's jump into the episode. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Fit, Healthy, and most of all, Happy podcast. I'm your coach and host, Josh, here with
his co-host and co-coach, KG, and I'm in the house. Today, we're going to be talking about how to get off the last 10 pounds of stubborn fat that you're just wanting to get rid of. I know a lot of people are in this situation, and even when it comes down to it, I find that the first 20 pounds come off with effort and whatnot, and the people who are looking to get rid of that last 10 pounds, a lot of it's going to come down to precision, patience, discipline, and all these higher level tactics that you are likely missing out on. So the first thing I want to say is that you will have to dial in your nutrition with precision. And what I mean by this is a lot of people who are struggling on their journey and they want to see a little bit more change and get rid of that last 5, 10, 15 pounds, whatever the case is, a lot of people will be like, you know what? I'm just going to have more salads. I'm just going to eat healthier. And unfortunately, that's just not going to cut it. And the word precision is tossed in here because you need to make sure that everything is as accurate as possible, especially when it comes down to it. If you're just starting on your journey, you have some weight to lose, and you start to cut out pops and sugary stuff and extra snacks, you will absolutely lose weight. But to get the last little bit off, the numbers have to be accurate. Everything has to be as dialed in as possible, and you have to be tracking your calories. This alone will make such a big difference. So if you're logging everything as accurately as possible, you will be able to make change 100%. Now, a lot of people, when they get to this point, they think they're doing everything right, but unfortunately, they're still not. They're going to Costco once a week, just going through the sample aisle, grabbing a bunch of stuff. When they cook food for their kids, they're just grabbing a bunch of different bites and whatnot. You're not using measuring cups, you're not using food scales, and you're just not in a true deficit. So this alone will make such a big difference. You can't just say, hey, I'm going to eat more salads, I'm going to do all these different things. Like, you need to be as accurate as possible. And once again, if you are that person who says, I don't have time to track, I don't have time to pre-log, I don't have time to meal prep, the truth is you don't want it bad enough. Like, it just doesn't make sense. And a lot of people will say stuff like this, but their screen time will be 6 hours a day, and then they'll go out to a lot of get-togethers, and they just have a lot of other things that they're doing, and they're not prioritizing this step that they're trying to accomplish. So this alone makes such a big difference, and that's why it's number one today.
Yeah, this first point is huge. And one quote Coach Kyle loves, he said it a few times, is you didn't come this far to only come this far. And when you create change, you begin those steps to become healthier, to start tracking your food, to lose a little bit of weight, to say no to some sweets, to stop that late night snacking. You've done the hard thing. You've started, right? So what you need to understand to see more results, it's actually going to take, like Kyle had mentioned, more precision. And to do that, you're going to need to be more accurate with that tracking. You're not going to be able to do less. And I think where people go wrong is they see a little bit of change, they lose a little bit of weight, and they're like, I want to take my foot off the gas. I don't want to track at all. I'm going to track more inaccurately, or I don't need to put these snacks in. And that's where this frustration builds, especially with this last little bit of fat. You need to become more hyper accurate. Like, the only way to get better is by getting better, right? If you want to be a top Olympian, you can't, or Olympian or athlete, whatever it may be, you can't take your foot off the gas and just naturally expect to be better at your craft. Like, you got to get out there and do more and more. That's why the best basketball players, the best free-point shooters, they're free throw shooters. Oh my gosh, sorry, I'm a little tongue-tied, but they're out there, and some of them are shooting like 1,000 balls a day. I know Steph Curry does something crazy. So just you with your game, like Kyle said, prioritize the tracking. Like, this is the easiest, most guaranteed way to lose fat. And if you're overlooking this, or you're not even starting at all, like, you're really hindering yourself, because the more precise you can be, you can absolutely guarantee you're in a deficit. If you're in a deficit, you will lose that fat. It will come off. If you don't, you're just wishy-washy and you're floating, like, you may as well turn this episode off, because you're not going to see that change All the additional tips will help, but this is where you really need to get in there. You need to put in that work. And what's nice is once that fat's off and you're in a really great place, that's where you have a little bit more opportunity. But you'll notice too, anyone who needs to lose a lot of fat, they need to be hyper accurate, or they're competing for like a show, you'll notice there's less margin for error, and there's a reason for that. So I just want to add that on as a little addition to the first one. But the second one, as well as obviously tracking your food and making sure you're in a deficit there, is you can theoretically, well, not theoretically, you can actually just increase your output. So you could do more steps, you could lift longer. The drawback here, as a drawback with cutting your food too low, is the energy components. If you really beat yourself, like if you were like running like a marathon a day, it'd be very, very taxing. It'd be hard to do that consistently. There can be a big drawback towards that. So you do want to be cautious with the amount of activity you do. And I think people burn themselves out because they'll get really excited, they'll lose some fat, and they'll start running more, they'll start lifting twice as much, and it becomes like this crazy unsustainable amount. Another good example I see often is people get quite lean that'll do like an hour on the Stairmaster every day with their lifting. To me, that just sounds like crazy. Like that would take it out of me. It's not to say you couldn't do it and maybe you can elevate your level of action. I just know personally I would see a lot of fatigue there, and I would rather just cut calories a smidgen, do something less taxing like walking, and just lightly elevate that a bit to support that goal. So that's where I'm not a big fan of that, because right away when you take that out, like let's say we lose that fat and you stop doing that extra hour of cardio, you're probably going to eat the same. And that's where you can kind of start to put it back on. So that is where I'm always cautious of that. But I do love just sometimes bumping up steps. If you do 10,000, go to 14,000. That'll really, really greatly help you get leaner and obviously more output. That deficit can be a little bit more extreme. Moving in general is really good. So it can be a tool. Just be aware there is a drawback associated with that. And that's where you're always pulling levers, and there's always a cost. Less food might be less energy, less intention in the training, more activity. Obviously you can eat more food, but maybe there's more fatigue. There's more of a time component as well. Not everyone can work out an hour and do an hour of Stairmaster. So couple different things you need to consider.
Yeah, and one thing that also I forgot to mention, so like when it comes down to the last 10 pounds, you do have to, and bringing this back to nutrition that I forgot to mention in the first point, you do have to make a lot of sacrifices. Like in the first little bit, you may be able to incorporate a lot of things that you were, you're in a smaller deficit. So like that's totally fine. But the last 10 pounds, you do have to, once again, make those adjustments. But yesterday we were out to dinner with for our friend's birthday, and Josh and I were looking at the menu. I was looking at the reviews and I was like tempted to get a burger. And Josh was like, man, those are definitely like 1,000 calories. And so with that, like when it comes down to the precision and like being honest with yourself, it would be easy for me to just be like, oh, well, if I search online, they're 400, like I bet you it's 400 calories, and then just like overeat and like just not actually be honest. Like a lot of people make these mistakes where they may not realize it. They're kind of like hidden mistakes where they're like, oh, well, I'm still trying to be as accurate as possible. You're guessing, but you just don't realize, like you just really have to, once again, be honest. You have to overlog. Even when it comes down to a donut, you can fit it in, but there's some things like people will be like, oh, donut, 200 calories, when we know in reality they're like 550 because they're so dense and whatnot. So that's just a little bonus point that I didn't have written down here, is just be honest and try to be as honest as possible. But next up is just ensuring you're using data properly. So a lot of times people, even when I have these discussions, if I were to say to someone who says, hey, I'm just not losing weight, I've got a little bit to go, I'll be like, okay, so like, what are the weigh-ins looking like? And they're like, oh, well, I weigh in once a week, or like, I don't even weigh in at all. So we need to make sure to use these tools, because if we don't have the proper data, we can't make the right adjustments. So even for nutrition, you can't make adjustments to your calorie intake if you don't have the numbers in front of you. We can't see if we're actually making progress without the right numbers, when it comes down to the weigh-ins. So always making sure, and even with our challenge, I've been weighing in every day, such better data than just choosing days that I want to weigh in. So 7 days a week, calculating the average. Even I don't believe you should be weighing in once a week, because that's not going to be as accurate as possible. You could just literally stop eating the day before super early. Just make sure you're not drinking as much water. Like you can do things to manipulate that. Whereas every day, the same spot, the same scenario after going to the washroom, the same clothing, I weigh in, I calculate the average, I put in my spreadsheet. And that alone gives me a lot of great data on top of monthly progress photos and monthly measurements. So this alone, on top of monitoring my strength gains, gives me so much great data. And we always say, like, it's hard to see progress without the actual data in front of us. So this alone makes a big difference. If you're not utilizing it, I highly recommend starting now. So that's going to be number 3.
Yeah, the mixture of Kyle's 2.5 and 3 are huge. Like cherry picking data, you're just hurting yourself because it's so easy to think you're hitting your calories and say deficits don't work for me. And then Kyle, he's utilizing flexible dieting, he's doing a great job, and he goes to a bakery, gets a donut, and he logs it as like a Dunkin' Donuts donut, which maybe is a little less caloric, a little less glamorous, if you will. And the difference between the two, like donuts are a good example because some of them are just so intensive. They could be 600-700 calories. And right away, there's 500 calories there. And then he goes to dinner and he logs it as like a small burger, like a quarter pounder from McDonald's or something. So it's like 400 calories or whatever it is. I'm not actually sure, but let's say that burger's 1,000 calories. We're talking 1,100 calories of disparity there. And that's where like, this data is only valuable if you're honest to yourself. And with that, all he's doing is like stroking his ego and wasting his time because he thinks he hits his calories and he goes, the deficit doesn't work for me. I've gained weight. But the reality is if you're gaining weight, you're in a surplus. If your weight's staying the same, you're at maintenance. And if you're losing weight, you are in a deficit. But that's where you got to have these harsh discussions. You got to be honest with yourself and you want to improve accuracy the best you can. And obviously there's things we can't control. I logged steak yesterday. I don't know how much butter the chef put or oil, but I do my best to kind of use that. And then I use hunger signaling on the side. But especially that last 10 pounds will require that much more effort. He could maybe get away with those examples I just shared if he was previously 400 pounds because it'd still probably move the needle from like no tracking at all. But when you do something, you want to make sure you're doing it right. So those were just 2 great points. And I do notice like challenging this belief with my clients and really working on accuracy really can speed up that process. But the 4th tip is advanced tips and tools. So in the little intro here, obviously I mentioned we have a free training hacks guide. So I'll get into more detail with these. Things like reverse diets are amazing because when you complete a diet, it helps you pull out of a diet. Because for those of you that have maybe been to where you've wanted to be, but then you gain that 10 pounds back and you just flutter between losing it and gaining it, chances are it's because you're not doing a reverse diet. Reverse diet is where you intelligently reintroduce calories so you can actually eat more calories and kind of move up that set weight. So maybe if I was 220 pre-cut, eating, let's call it 3,500 calories, maybe I get down to 212, I finish that cut at, let's say, 2,500 calories for the sake of this example, so 1,000 less, it'd be a net win for me to be 214 at 3,400 calories or close to where I was before because I'm maintaining that fat loss, but I've reintroduced those calories intelligently. Then obviously this gets quite technical, so we won't get into a full reverse dieting episode. But what I'll say is like, I know it's super sexy. I'd like to reverse diet, not diet myself, but you have to earn the reverse diet by actually completing a diet. So you got to do these other tips. Outside of that, things like diet breaks have a place and they can be very intentional as well because some people I think break their diets because they'll be in a dieting phase. And unfortunately, if you have a lot of fat to lose, that phase can be longer. So like, let's say in the middle of that dieting phase, you're going to Paris or something for a week with your friends and you plan this for 3 years, right? People have a big identity crisis of like wanting to stick to their goals and wanting to blow it out and just like lose control. And especially if you're that all or nothing person. So that's where you can intelligently say, hey, I'm going to take a break from my diet this week. So I was down to 2,500, but I'm going to go back to 3,500. Maybe I'll see a pound or 2 gain on the scale, but I'm not going to be eating 4,000, 5,000. I'm going to still have that balance. And I'm just bringing that week or 2 weeks of intentionality, especially for those of you that are really deep in a deficit. Doing this can actually kind of bring back up your hormones and get everything working again, especially leptin and ghrelin, which are responsible for how hungry you are and how satisfied you are with foods. So doing these things and using these advanced tools that I cover in this document can be very, very beneficial. Obviously, what's hard is when you're doing it yourself, it's easy to be like, oh, bro, it's a diet break this week. Like I'm just, I'm taking a little break and you just start eating everything. That's not how it works. Like you're just going to end up gaining all the weight. So that's where like with my clients, I use these things very intentionally and I'll use them where I feel it's appropriate, but they have their place and doing them intelligently is absolutely amazing. Even things like carb refeeds are heaven sends when you're competing. I think most people don't get lean enough where they need them, but these advanced tools can be your best friend.
Yeah, honestly, get that guide. it'll change the game for you. And yeah, Josh did a killer job putting that together. So I'm excited for you to all get that completely free. But next up, and this was a bit of a different one, but it's mainly focusing on lifestyle and recovery. So what I mean by this is mainly stress management as well as sleep. So a lot of people, they have great intentions to cut their calories back, to move more, and their body's just constantly fighting against them just due to stress being extremely elevated and sleep just not being as great as possible. So it's very easy for people to overlook. I hear this all the time. People are like, how is this going to make a difference? What you don't realize is that your body, once again, is just not doing what it wants to, right? So the hormones that are responsible for you to feel full and satisfied are going to be completely out of whack. And on the other end, the hormones that are responsible for you like kind of craving unhealthier, just fattier, sugary foods, they'll also like just be going completely nuts. You're just going to want everything. And a lot of times people are like, why are my cravings so bad? And like, why am I not feeling satisfied? And, you know, they're having healthy whole foods and they're wondering why they're not seeing change. A lot of it just comes down to just not having that in place, right? You're being completely stressed out. Your cortisol is messed up. Everything's elevated. It sounds, once again, very simple to overlook and be like, oh, this won't make a big difference, but I've seen it so many different times. And even just on that note, like one extra add-on I'll say with this is try to cut out alcohol as best as possible. Like I know sometimes people will say I do it for work and like I've got a wedding, like, okay, I get it. There is a time and place and hey, if you want to make it work and fit it in, that's fine. But I would say it adds zero like value. It's just going to add on calories. It's one of those things that will have a ripple effect into your decision making and all this other stuff. So this alone will make such a big difference. But one thing I wanted to also mention is, and this is a little add-on, just make sure you're eating healthy whole foods. Like I can't tell you enough how many times I see people trying to fit in like every one of their fun foods and just really going against this. Like it's going to be so hard to be satiated and hit your protein just from like kind of winging it. Like you need to make sure you're cooking. You need to make sure that you're getting some meal prep going, like especially in these last 10 pounds. I'd love to say you can just like completely bro it out, but I really don't believe you can. And it really depends on how many calories you have to consume. But most people, when you're in this deeper deficit and you're like in the bottom end to like get rid of the 10 pounds, you have to be so intentional. So I can't stress that enough, but that's going to be number 5 for today.
Yeah, and before I get into the last tip, like I'm always hesitant with these episodes because I know like if you are looking to lose the 10 last pounds of fat, it's so easy to like be like a squirrel and go from one thing to the other and try to figure out what you need or what the secret hack is. And even from this episode, I understand it's quite a lot of information, but the best thing, if there's one answer, it's like, let me do the work for you. Like there's a reason, you know, if I have a plumbing issue in my house, I don't try to figure it out. I just hire the expert. I don't have to think about it. It's nice. It's done. And it's very much like this too. Like if you want to lose that last bit of fat, check out our website. It's no pressure, ColossusFitness.com. It's there below like the keyword for the training hacks. So you can go ahead and check that out. And like, we will do all this for you and I'll tell you exactly what you'll need. Cause you might think you're doing one thing wrong, but you're doing the other thing wrong or doing something right. Some people actually need to give them more food, more calories. Like it's so nuanced, right? And there's so much that goes into it. And that's where I'm hard just spitballing like 50 different hacks or tips to you. Like each situation is so unique and different. And I think having someone on your side, on your team with like no emotions attached, just to say, hey, like every weekend you're shooting yourself in the foot. Like I'll notice sometimes new people come in, I'll say weigh in every day or as close to it as you can. They'll do that Monday to Friday. It's killer. Nutrition's beautiful. Weights trending down. We're killing it. Weekend, I see they don't weigh in till next Wednesday, and their weight's the same as it was last week. And it's like, okay, you know these people, like you went way over, and your satiety's full. Like so, it's like little things like that, and having someone call you out on them is huge. And that is my next tip as well. Is like challenging your mindset. So to lose that last 10 pounds, to get somewhere you've never been, you need to do something you've never done. So you really need to ramp up that accuracy, that intensity towards it. You need to challenge your mindset a lot, like having patience, having consistency, stringing together those boring small wins of hitting your calories, getting a good sleep, training hard. Like that's how phenomenal transformations are made. It's not sexy. You'd like to think you could blitz it out for a week, but just being consistent, being patient, doing what works, really limiting those extremes, those big blowout days, like understanding the phasing of this is absolutely everything. And from that, you can get lean, stay lean, and have amazing results. But that was our episode today. Free guide, training hacks. If you want to learn more about coaching and you want to take all the pain away from this and just have us tell you exactly what to do so you can just get those results fully guaranteed, like, I don't know why you wouldn't do that. So don't miss out on that. Check out that with our website link there. But thank you so much for tuning in today. We'll see you in the next one. Peace out.